there's a loading bar. Okay, this looks good. Okay, we are live on YouTube. This is a meeting of the Node.js tooling. There's a loading bar. Okay, this looks good. Okay, we are live on. There we go. We are live on YouTube. This is a meeting of the Node.js tooling group. Joined with me is Roy, Christopher, Corey, MSO Hale. Who is that on that line? I don't know if I know your first name.
I am Neil.
Hey, welcome.
Hey.
Okay, Chris, do you want to go to the agenda and kick us off?
Sorry, I thought you were doing that and I was going to take the minutes. You're muted.
Oh, yeah, that sounds good. Let me pop open the agenda.
Yeah, thanks.
One sec, I just got it here. So the first item on the, any announcements anyone wants to make before we go into agenda items?
Yeah, last time I was, at that conference and basically did I had no marbles and everything was messed up in the hotel room and all this stuff. So anyway, 2 weeks ago, I released the tool I've been working on for the past, I don't know, 5 months or so, which is mostly a command line tool to work with diagnostic reports in Node. And so diagnostic reports is an experimental feature. It was added pretty recently, but what it does is it causes Node to dump a large JSON file full of information, which is useful for debugging and figuring out what's going on with the process. Anyway, I've been working on this tool that ingests this JSON report and then outputs other information. So, for example, it works a little bit like ESLint, where there are heuristics that it will run against the report. And from that, it will say things like, oh, hey, look at this weird thing that could be a problem. And it kind of does some analysis of this JSON file for you. In addition to that, it will redact secrets from the environment, because that report JSON has the entire environment and you don't want to expose your API keys or what have you. So it will redact secrets, it will convert to other formats, and you can kind of diff two reports side by side in a kind of purpose-built way, which eliminates noise and nonsense. So yeah, I've been working on that. I released it, it's up, and it's alpha, but I got a website and the website is incomplete, but I do have like a quick start guide, and it's kind of neat. So IBM GitHub.com toolkit or IO. Let's see. There is the lovely site that I built with. IBM's has this like design system, and they have a Gatsby theme, and so I learned Gatsby to make the site, and yada yada yada. Anyway, but that's what I've been working on almost exclusively for the past like 5 months, and so it felt good to get something out there, and it is a tool, and it has to do with Node.js, so there it is.
Awesome.
So that's my announcement.
What I was going to ask, so what kind of diagnostic information, like would it help us dig into memory leaks or just performance characteristics, or like what sorts of?
A little bit. I mean, it can't tell you what line of code is leaking, right? But it can provide information about memory usage and memory usage over time. The diagnostic report can be triggered on like an uncaught exception. And so it'll help you figure out like why your process died. It will report on a fatal, which could be an out of memory, and you may get more information there, but it's still, it can't tell you where you're leaking memory. It can only tell you like the straw that broke the camel's back. It will tell you, what line the process ran out of memory on, right? So yeah, and so there's heuristics that I built in, and of course because it's like ESLint, it's like customizable, configurable. You can write your own heuristics if there's something weird, and yeah, that's kind of the idea.
Cool, that makes sense. So everyone, I put the website in the notes, but everyone should go try that out and give feedback.
Yeah, I mean, first just start playing with diagnostic reports. It's as I said, it's new. It's an experimental API, but yeah, it's definitely useful, especially if you like have a process in production that you can't just like attach a debugger to. You can manually trigger a report just by sending a signal to the process. So yeah, there are lots of different use cases for it, but yeah.
Awesome.
Is this, I assume this is for a newer Node.js version?
Yeah, so it like 12 or newer, essentially. Diagnostic reports arrived in like Node 11.7. So.
Cool. So the first is that good? Does anyone else have any questions for Chris? Cool. Well, I'll get into the first agenda item. So.
Oh, I have one more.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. So yeah, because I think it's tangentially like interesting for the group, but we've been working on the NPM fund. So NPM is going to add a way for maintainers to provide information about how to fund their projects. So I've been working on that for the last 2 weeks. So the PR is open. It hasn't been merged yet, but we are aiming to release it next week, on the next week release. So basically, maintainers are going to be able to add a funding object pointing to your URL, and it can be like a patron, open collective, whatever they want, right? And NPM, the CLI is going to provide a way for consumers to list all their info, visit one of them, and basically take some action. So let me share the link to the PR, so if anyone is interested.
That's cool. I'm interested as a maintainer of some popular libraries, but I looked into it for what's the one? Oh, Tidelift. That's one that's popular right now, right? I was looking into it, and as a Canadian working in the United States, it's difficult for me, unfortunately. So I'm definitely curious. This is top of my mind right now, though. I'd love to, if I could monetize some of my modules, it would be awesome. But I think I need like a visa for everything that gives me money in the United States or something. It's like, it's a pain in the butt.
Yeah, that's complicated.
So is it similar to Tidelift where, well, I guess you're not going to be collecting the money yourself.
Yeah, no. Yeah, we're just providing a way for people to list it.
This sounds kind of like the .github/funding YAML, where so basically NPM will be able to provide links to external sponsorship programs. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
You're already using Tidelift, right, Corey? So he might be a good guinea pig.
Yes, I am, and I still have a little bit of work to do with adding like the sponsorship header to the readmes, and well, that's the main thing. But yes, I'd be interested in this once NPM has support for it.
Awesome.
So first agenda item, meeting at OpenJSF Summit. And is this before Montreal or just after Montreal, Chris?
I believe the summit is right after, isn't it?
After, let me double
Yeah,
check.
it is in Montreal. Yeah.
Yeah. So this used to be Collaborator Summit, and then now it's OpenJSF Summit. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the OpenJS Foundation Collaborator Summit or something like
Oh,
something
okay,
awful
cool.
like that.
Yes. So I guess we're just starting to hammer out details of what we want to do. You've submitted a session already, I see.
Yeah, so we should have a session, and I think it's worth just, you know, it'll be upon us soon. So maybe we should. Am I muted?
No, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yeah.
With attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could start thinking about that. So like, what would be a good format for that meeting? You know, I expect there to be probably quite a few people in it, and lots of people that don't usually participate. And so maybe we should write up like a short agenda of like, I don't know, intro to tooling group, and this is what we do. This is how you can get involved, and then I don't know. So let's think about that.
Let me start. Is someone taking notes here? Let me take some notes.
Yeah, I'll take the notes.
I was going to say, like, I think we've actually had a few successes now, which is great. Brian English added a stat on listing directories. That's a great win for tooling. We have Mictor recursive. We have coverage. We have RimRaf now is landed, and we're actually starting to use RimRaf in some of Node core test libraries. So like Node's using RimRaf, which is great. Well, they're trying to, but the Windows tests aren't working. So we should maybe talk about that today, actually. Long story short, I think we kind of need to open with maybe talking about some of the things we have done and why and how the working group has been a bit of a success so far. I think more so than the first meeting, because I think the first meeting we had, we basically had only done maybe one of these action items, and we've done a couple more since then. So it's kind of starting to show how the working group is creating value. I think that'd be neat. Maybe pull the room and see, like, I guess maybe like we also represent a bunch of tools from the community, like NPM, NYC, Mocha. Kind of maybe give some background about like tooling outside of Node core and our interest in that, and then the relationship between that and Node core. I think there's some value there as well. I don't know. I didn't feel like the meeting went poor. Like we had a lot of interest at the last meeting we had, but it was kind of, maybe we could have used a bit more structure, I guess. Like we went deep on a couple topics.
Yeah, it was kind of by the seat of our pants. We didn't really have a great agenda there. So yeah, these are all good ideas.
Do we know how long the session will be?
Yeah, I think it's up to us to decide. I think it can be anywhere from 1 to 2 hours.
I mean, it might be interesting to try to do like a 2-hour one, but then like time box some of the stuff. So like still allow for some of the I don't want to say off topic, but still allow for some of the heated, deep conversations where we argue about whether RimRaf should be in core, but maybe time box them to like 30 minutes or something so that we can also have a few more structured conversations. It would just be my thinking.
Yeah, I like the idea of a longer session. It would be really good to be able to focus on a few things. And I mean, we don't usually get that opportunity to have like a, you know.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it's just the type of conversation where there's the risk that one thing derails us for half an hour and then we're halfway through an hour conversation at that point. So just being cognizant of that.
Yeah, and I think one more thing that we could count on the agenda is like opening for new participants to bring new ideas. I think that was something really cool in Vancouver. Last time I've been in one of these. I think it was the first meeting from the group, but there was a ton of new ideas, like potential ideas.
So it sounds like maybe like let's just maybe even have a meeting outside of this one and actually treat this a little bit more like a talk where we have a structure, like let's plan the structure out a bit between a few of us and like just really have a plan. We don't have to figure it out on this call, but let's not fly by the seat of our pants this time. A good goal.
I mean, do we really need to schedule another meeting for? I mean, can we not just take the next one and that's what we'll do?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, do you want to just like plan like the whole agenda for the next tooling group meeting? Let's just nerd out on what our summit talk should be like. That makes sense to me.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, I guess I'm running this meeting accidentally. 1 second here. Going back to the notes. Better way to detect a process opening. I haven't been keeping a super close eye on this conversation. Sounds like, so one thing I'll note is I see Sam replied here, and it sounds like maybe I don't know. I think a lot of the contention around this feature idea was on the ability to detect an async exiting, and I think it would be a huge benefit if we just kind of tried to have a exit event that always fires on exit, but it doesn't work in async. I think that would still be an improvement. Maybe we should. Doesn't seem like we'd have too much controversy around implementing that.
Yes, and just to clarify, the controversy was about supporting an async callback. So in other words, being able to run asynchronous code after the exit's detected. For my own use in NYC, I've essentially found a way completely around that. So I no longer need the ability to run async code in exit.
I almost wonder, like, what if we just introduced a new hook that was like exit or signal or something? Like, it's like, you know, something that's just a little bit more comprehensive. That's like, if you got a signal that would have caused an exit, or if the exit is happening, this event will fire. Just try to make it descriptive.
Not sure if I thought I saw somebody suggest essentially like a process dot on terminate event.
I like that. I like that. That sounds good. We should loop. I feel like Joyi would like really knows, either Anna or Joyi really know this part of the system well and could probably help us implement it in like 30 minutes if they were bought into it. Because Joyi's been moving around all the exit logic around test coverage into C, and she knows that area really well. So I feel like we basically already do this for test coverage. We write it whenever it exits, no matter what caused the exit to happen. So we could totally just have a hook fire around that same point in the process exiting. I think that would be cool.
So is there actually a way to detect if an event exists? Or would we have to do version-based detection? Like assuming that a terminate event is added to the process object, how do we feature detect that? Would we just have to check the Node.js version? Like to decide if we have to fall back on signal exit?
Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head if those are they might be enumerated somewhere where you could just get a list of some of the events, but I don't know off the top of my head. Good question. I don't know, do you think that would, Corey, I guess maybe you're one of the main stakeholders of this. Do you think that assuming you could detect the feature, do you think that having this terminate that would fire on any fatal termination of execution in your program would be helpful for some of the stuff you do with NYC?
Yes, I think it would be better for us to essentially hook a terminate event rather than like signal exit hooks the a couple of signal handlers in addition to the normal process exit event. And one of the things I'd like to see is basically for NYC to avoid manipulating the like the state of the application, the environment. And I think that hooking signal handlers is something we really try to avoid.
Well, I mean, what you could totally, like, regardless of how feature detection works, you could add this feature into signal exit, right? And so we would, like, if you're on node 13.5, don't hook signals, just use this event. If you're an earlier version of node, then do the signal handling.
Yes, that detection would happen. Essentially, there would be a branch that would say, if supported version, then process dot on terminate, callback, or if not, then use signal exit to hook it. One thing you mentioned, you were talking about this happening on basically a crash or like a fail termination. In my mind, this event needs to cover all causes of termination, including the normal success case.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, that makes sense. Sorry. Yeah. Makes sense. Well, I was going to say, Corey, I know you've been starting to noodle around in Node a little bit. Like, would you be interested in implementing this? Potentially?
I can try and take a look. Honestly, my time has been a little bit limited lately.
Okay.
But I can try and check it out. If I remember right, you said that there's actually a your C8 integration has some code that runs in Node.js that essentially, if I'm understanding correctly, that's where I'd want to hook in.
I would look, Joe, you moved some of it into C++, but there's, yeah, exactly. Right where we write coverage should happen for all normal and fail exit cases in Node.js, and we have unit tests around it. So there's probably, you could look at exactly where the coverage gets written, and that would be a good place to add the event. And I would help with code review. Like this, I think this feature would be great. I'd happily help with code review. And at least make sure Joyi reads it, or Anna, maybe. They're probably the two most experienced people in that part of the code base. Cool. Well, no pressure, but this might be a good contribution.
Okay.
Anyone else have any thoughts on this topic? Moving along then. So source map v3 support in Node. One update is one person came in from the community from Express, and there's a common plugin in Express that was overriding like an undocumented shim you could do to rewrite stack coverage. So there's some discussion happening around should we still run that shim and not try to take over the stack trace, even if you've provided enable source maps true? So that's been one topic of conversation. Seems to have not been too much noise though. Like one person came in, and then there's some discussion around what the right implementation would be, but we haven't actually gone either way on that discussion yet. Let me save. Can you find that ticket, Chris? I think it's in Node. It will be one of the recently opened issues with source map in the title. A more interesting update though, I think like there's definitely work to do on this feature still. And I think it's a valuable feature because so many people use TypeScript or Babel. So I basically have an issue open that has a bunch of deltas that would be great places for people to start working on the code base. So if anyone has any mentors that would like that they are working with or would like to get some contributions into Node.js themselves, I would love to help you land some issues related to source maps. I know Ian said he was interested. He's not on the call today, but I think just an open call for help. I'd love to make that feature more polished. That includes making it work nicely with things like Express and old plugins. And the most fun, biggest delta to work on probably is that it doesn't point to the right line of code that failed. It only rewrites the stack trace. So it'd be kind of neat if you could actually point to both the original source and the transpiled source when the exception throws. That'd be a fun thing to work on.
You're asking for help with what issue exactly?
There's two issues. Let me find them quickly if you can bear with me.
I found the one from Doug Wilson.
There's one just before that also called source maps. So it's like enable. So one issue I'm asking for help with is figuring out how to solve Doug Wilson's problem in a nice way. The other one is 29865, which is just a bunch of checkboxes with some work we could be doing around source map. Oh, and I think I snuck in one thing related to coverage too that was driving me nuts. So you can ignore the coverage one if you don't feel like working on coverage. I think that's the update though. I haven't done much work on source maps recently, but would happily help onboard someone to that part of the code base and would love help. Anyone else have any thoughts on that? So we come to Roy's part of the conversation, command line argument parsing, and we have failed to give you feedback. I'm sorry. I looped you into a conversation at Google about it though, so I have been thinking about it.
Yeah, I saw the comment on that PR.
Do you want to give us a little bit of an update, Roy, or what your current thinking is?
Oh, and can you please paste the URL in the chat or in the doc?
Oh, sure.
Oh, for the thing we want feedback on? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I thought it was the argument parsing one, but I'll also drop that just in case. But yeah, there's not much in terms of update. Just waiting for feedback. Yeah.
Sorry about that. I'm at some point soon, I'm going to try and make a point to kind of do a write-up of what I had suggested in the last meeting and just kind of post that on the PR so that others can see and potentially comment.
Yeah, yeah, that'd be great.
You know, like I said before, I'm not sure that my idea is necessarily the way to go. I just think it's worth considering.
I'm in this
Yeah,
weird.
definitely.
I'm really torn on this feature. Like like we use in all of our canonical samples we put across hundreds of libraries on the client libraries team I work on at Google. We have, you know, it starts with process.slice2. Blah blah blah, and it's like a little confusing. If you're newish to programming, you're like, what the heck is happening here? Why am I slicing this? So I see the value of main arcs. I'm also like super on the fence of like, it's such a simple thing. It's just doing slice for you. Like, I'd rather have something like minimalist in Node, I think, which we've talked a ton about. So it's like, I guess if I can't have something closer to minimalist, this is better than a kick in the head. But I'm like, I don't know. I'm wondering if there's like some middle ground like we could figure out, but obviously I haven't put a ton of thought into it yet, and I apologize. I just haven't.
Yeah, I'm totally okay on just like having us sitting on that for a while. Like we can gather more feedback, especially maybe after the summit. That can be like one big topic of the conversation, the summit, and we can use that as an example of like what has been proposed, like one direction we can take and see like if you can actually get some consensus on the way moving forward. And it might be that we really want to a more robust argument parser.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Python has a robust argument parser.
Yeah. My original idea, like the original one I started proposing, which I just basically wrote the docs and made an example pull request like this one, but it was very inspired on the Python one, yeah.
And
Which
this might,
helps, like, yeah, it's kind of helped out with a little bit of the contentious subject of what feature set to propose to support, right? Because it's a way more limited feature set too.
what's worth saying, like it felt like if you were at our last conversation we had in person at in Berlin, I think, it felt like we would never land RimRaf because it was so controversial, and then that landed in like 3 days, like with like well, I mean, it was like a couple of months of noodling around on it, and then someone was like, I'm just going to do it like this, and then suddenly they had 4 approvals and they landed it. So I wonder if argument parsing could be similar, where we like talk about how controversial it is, but actually if we put a little utility library in, it would just land. I don't know.
Honestly, I think that's not really, the comparison doesn't really line up, because RimRaf basically, it does X, and X is very well defined, and there really isn't any controversy about the spec of X. In the case of command line parsing, there's quite a few conflicting opinions on what exactly that should accomplish and how it should work. And I'm not sure how that can really be, without proving that there's common ground. I'm not sure how that really moves forward.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Well, then maybe it is something like main args, I guess. But I think it is. I think this is a great conversation for Montreal, though, because it's I don't know, it's a great topic. We want to get a lot of people's opinions.
Yeah.
But well, like it's the sort of thing that will have a lot of benefit. Like suddenly we'll have like literally, in our case, we'll have hundreds or thousands of code samples being updated in the next couple of years if we have a better approach. So it's like, you know, noticeable impact. Cool. Any other thoughts from folks on that topic? If I could inject one agenda item, I was coding with Rich Trott on Wednesday of this week, and he just brought up that they were trying to move some of their tests to RimRaf, but the Windows tests had failed for Node.js itself when they tried to move some of the code to RimRaf. So I think we should investigate this, and maybe adding some more tests to RimRaf or something we should have on our minds as something our working group takes on or tries to encourage. Because it's, I mean, one of the reasons I was really excited about the RimRaf port was that it would make test cleaner in Node.js, which McDir recursive certainly did. So if we're not able to use it ourselves, then it might as well not be there. So we should fix it. Yeah. It's just 2 cents. So, and maybe that's another thing to have in our minds if we know anyone, like if anyone's doing the mentorship program still, or knows anyone who's looking to get their first few contributions into Node.js, that might be a good unit of work as well.
Are there open issues?
That's it. We should maybe an action item is just we reach out to Rich and say, have you opened an issue for this? Like which tests failed specifically? Just so we can figure it out. There's exactly the sorts of issues we expect to fail, which is like, I think, a race condition in Windows not deleting the files fast enough. So RimRaf kind of bails. So anyone have any topics they want to bring up? Chris?
I'm going to give this action item to you to talk to Rich.
Sounds good. Yeah. I believe Ian's mentor that he was helping had written a couple tests for RimRaf, so he'd be maybe a good candidate to dig into that stuff when we see him.
So have an issue open with Node.js essentially about process.binding spawn sync is deprecated. Ultimately, NYC can't function without what that provides. In the new version of NYC, we're moving away from spawn wrap, which basically created a shell script that injected options into the Node.js process and basically replaced the program you were running. The new version still uses the spawn sync binding, but at this point, all it does is manipulate the environment prior to executing a new process. And I'm wondering if that's something that could potentially get into Node.js. Obviously, there's kind of like a security concern there, because some arbitrary library would basically be able to say, hey, we're adding this to the environment of the sub process. And well, in the case of the way Node.js works, it's actually saying, this module should automatically be, preloaded into every sub process. So I could see the Node.js core having security concerns there.
You're basically asking for like a way to set sticky environment variables that would be moved to any process, even though it's not spawned synchronously. Is that what I'm following? It's like kind of sticky environment variables.
Well, sticky environment wouldn't necessarily do the trick, because in some cases, like with NYC, it needs to set the node underscore options. So specifically, it needs to insert, the -- requires option. So simply for us to simply say this is the sticky node options wouldn't work. We'd need to hook a function that would say, okay, this is what the process is trying to spawn with. So we need to insert this into node options.
I understand, because someone else might have their own node options, so you might want to munge them.
Well, we would have to, not really a might.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't know if anybody here has suggestions on this.
I think
Sorry. I mean, isn't the environment inherited by default?
Yes, it is.
Okay, I guess I'm not understanding the issue then.
Well, one of the things that, like, for example, with NYC, if somebody basically runs a sub process where they say, environment is this one variable, that clears out all other variables.
I see.
So,
okay, I see what you're saying.
Or also in the case where, like, if somebody's testing code and let's say they just set node options, well, from there, coverage from that sub process just doesn't exist.
And this is the case not just for coverage, but like for if you were doing, monitoring across sub processes, basically any type of tooling that wants to instrument things that spawn sub processes themselves. Tap as an example. I guess I think it's worth. I would open an issue on, maybe start by opening an issue on the tooling repo, Corey. I don't think it's a bad idea at all. And what I kind of like about it is we kind of have this for Node.js's own coverage. We have a sticky environment variable, which is just the Node v8 coverage environment variable. But I would rather that we were using some sanctioned API for doing that, because then it's more generic. So I like just, it seems elegant. It allows us to get rid of a special case we have for one of our features in Node, which I like, and makes it something that the community can actually use. So, I mean, I don't know, it would be interesting. It's at least worth starting a conversation with some security-minded people. Like, you've already run the process, you've already installed the dependency. So like your computer's, you know, I don't know that the threat model is that different than just having a dependency. Like, it might not be as much of a security issue as you think.
That's a fair point. I'm just, you know, is kind of playing devil's advocate against myself and thinking about the objections that might be had. And ultimately, the reason that this is, not only would it be nice to have, like, you know, a nice API, process.binding is depreciated. So that's actually, I had originally opened a ticket on Node.js, the main repo, saying, you know, hey, this is essential functionality. What's our migration path? And so far, we don't really have one. And originally, one of my suggestions was that we could add like a kind of like a node preload variable that would automatically load specific modules and subprocesses. But ultimately, that wouldn't do everything we need, because we need to force certain variables to also be in those subprocesses. So I don't see a simple solution like that.
Cool. Well, yeah, maybe write it up in like a kind of design like a mini design document in the tooling working group for discussion, and we can kind of float it around.
Yeah. Also, if you want to drop the link to the issue you opened on Node.js, just so that they can take a look.
Yeah. And we can put that in the minutes too.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yep, I can put it in the minutes. Hold on.
Okay, that brings us to the end of our things in the agenda.
Okay, I just pasted the link to the process binding deprecation issue.
Nice. Anyone else have any questions, topics? Okay.
I'm good. Let's wrap it up.
We want 10 minutes back. Yeah. So I would say, like, just let's just plan for the full agenda for our next meeting. We will be skipping anything with agenda marked on it and spend a chunk of the next meeting planning our session in Montreal. So if you want to do some thinking over the next 2 weeks about that topic, then we can try to structure a little bit, pull together our thoughts in the next meeting, and hopefully run a good panel. I guess I should put together a talk for Montreal too. That'd be smart. I'm stressed out. Okay.
Sorry, I just wanted to ask about that meeting in Montreal. Are you going to be streaming that at all, or is that just an on-site only thing?
I think we can stream. Do you know, Chris?
I have no idea. I can. I'll talk to the foundation and see if that's possible.
How long of a drive is Montreal for you, Corey? You might be able to join, honestly. I think we had a few guests last time.
Yeah, the drive isn't the issue. Lack of passport is.
Okay. Yeah, I understand.
I mean, if it were 1999, then I'd say, oh, no problem. It's like a 6-hour drive, but it's not anymore. So I can't just go there.
Okay, let's talk about that a little bit offline. Okay, well, I'm going to end the live stream now. take care if we had any guests on YouTube. Feel free to leave comments on the tooling GitHub repo if you have any follow-up questions or comments.